Okay, yeah, my name is Chris Larcombe, or Larky. I'm passionate about, what am I passionate about? Lots of things. I'm passionate about synergizing my passions and into one synergistic flow experience where I'm doing AI stuff, digital art stuff, DJing, programming, dancing, all at once. Larking. I think my passion is larking, and yeah, I want to explore holonic computing. That's one of the things I'm passionate about, and fifth dimensional love technology, love-based AI that's like healing to talk to and fun to use, and I'm quite interested in virtual and augmented reality, but more like using it to like enhance cognition and enhance awareness and perception, rather than just sort of disconnect from everything. And yeah, music's amazing, and yeah, I am. Yeah.
Awesome.
What else is there to say? Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. New paradigm to me means really living from a different place within ourselves, living from essence, being more authentic, expressing who we are, being who we are, as in everything that we do is an expression of who we are rather than us fulfilling a specific role, but because our role in the planetary organism, if you like, is being ourselves. So that looks a specific way that's different for each individual, but that for me is what it is. It's actually us being ourselves and being also maybe a spiritual being as well. So then there's what does that mean?
So it's like people say we're not humans having a spiritual.
Yeah. The
Spiritual
new.
beings having a human experience.
I think the new paradigm is it's multifaceted. There are lots of different characteristics that define it, but the one thing for me that really summarizes it is heart-centered consciousness, and that is connected to being more ourselves. And I think that we're each unique, and we have a unique creative self-expression that doesn't really come into visibility in the current paradigm. So
can you speak a little bit about that? Like why?
Yeah,
Why it's not
because we are educated in a specific way. We're bombarded with a specific belief system and way of thinking through the media and through our peers, and that leads us to live and think in a specific way. And in order to meet our basic needs, we are often apparently needing to do specific things that are coming from outside of us rather than from inside. So the contrast would be, if we did have everything we need provided for us, what would we do then? It would be something more unique, something more connected to our essence, and I feel like the new paradigm is acknowledging that more explicitly. And there's also the infrastructure of the new paradigm which we're co-creating, which sustains a lifestyle based on that understanding. And it's through being ourselves and being who we are in our essence that we actually add value, like true value. And it's a bit like, the way I see it, it's as though it's like the current society, the current paradigm is like a puzzle, and each of us is a piece of the puzzle, but we've like crammed together the pieces in a way, and it's all jumbled up, and there's kind of a picture which is society, but it's like a bit of a mess, and everyone's in pain because they've been crammed into these like little boxes. And the new paradigm is like reassembling the pieces in a completely new way. So the things that people will end up doing will be different, and it'll be defined by something inside them, not something that society demands of them. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to be contributing value. In fact, it's the opposite. They're contributing more value, right? And it's coming from a different level, but it's more like art. It's not a means to an end. Everything is not this sort of masculine, practical,
survival,
patriarchal. It's more like also about, you know, the beingness, and coming from a space of beingness, and doing, but from a space of being. And it's coming from something inside. So we still do things, but it's motivated from within, and that's where the value is going to come from. So it's different. It's being like birthed through mutual attraction and synergy. So things get mutually attracted and then synergize, and then new things are born, instead of like forcing things together.
So like finding the way to flow with nature, because nature's
Yeah.
constantly expanding.
Yeah, we are nature, and remembering that and acting more like a cell of the earth is, for me, another description of the new paradigm. And I feel as though another word could be planetization. We're going to experience the planetization of consciousness. So we've seen globalization, but globe just means a sphere. Planet is much more than just a globe. And so the planetization of consciousness is planetary thinking, and that for me is thinking like a global organism, and everything being global, but at the same time honoring like each individual cell as like a part of the whole and a reflection of the whole, because it's, you know, there's this hermetic principle of as above so below, and I think that we are going to learn more about the human body and who we are, what we are. It's a different, the new paradigm involves a higher level of self-knowledge than what we've been used to, where we believe we're a person and we're mechanized into a specific role. Instead of that, we'll be seeing ourselves more like a spiritual being having a human experience, or a cell of the earth, part of a larger whole, with a specific life purpose, a specific calling, based on our unique DNA, which we're starting to become more aware of through things like the gene keys and you know, other systems, archetypal systems. So yeah, it's a whole new way of looking at self, and I think it really starts with that, a new way of thinking, synergistic thinking, thinking in wholes and parts, not just the parts in isolation. For me, it really starts with synergistic thinking, and I can think in synergies around who I am, what's the self, but then how would I organize myself in a society, what kind of technology would I build, how would I design the architecture. All of that filtering down from synergistic thinking creates a whole paradigm shift from what we've been used to. So for me, synergistic thinking is kind of at the root of it, and that for me is connected to the Vesica Pisces, which is linked to the Flower of Life geometry, and it's like kind of in nature already. So it's going back to what design is nature using, what did we do in the first place when we created all of this, and just remembering, really. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so a bit about the New Earth technology, or the new paradigm technology. So as I said, for me, it really begins with synergistic thinking. So what I see is synergistic technology.
Can you just describe synergy in layman's terms?
Yeah, synergy is the concept of a whole being more than the sum of its parts. So if you take a part and a part, which are themselves also wholes, right? But maybe they're parts because they're part of something larger, and you bring these two parts together, they form through their synergy, like through their like connection, a new thing, and that's a synergy. So the new thing that's more than the sum of its parts is a synergy. So a synergy is something that's more than the sum of its parts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like a new thing that's formed out of two parts that's not just this adds this, something entirely, something new. Like if you bring two people together, they have a relationship, the relationship is a synergy, because it's not one person and another, it's a whole new dynamic, whole new thing that emerges in the universe. And we see it with molecules, we see it with galaxies, we see it with everything. Yeah, it's fractal, it's everywhere. Yeah. So when we start to see that pattern, we can use that way of thinking and apply it to technology and computers, and that's what I've been doing. And for me, that creates a paradigm shift in computers and information theory and information and media, and I've been playing around with that, and I feel it's also, well, it's biomimicry too. It's biomimetic thinking and biomimetic technology. I like the concept of ergonomics as well. Like it's ergonomic technology. So we've been used to this very machine-like linear technology, and like I want to use something that's more natural, that I don't feel is lowering my vibration or draining me when I use it, and it's like helping me to think well, and like I get excited about that, and just it opens up new possibilities, and I feel like there's a lot of information that I want to make sense of, integrating a new way of thinking, integrating new information coming, that's very controversial, new technologies. There's a lot of information to integrate right now, and I'm wanting to use this Holonic technology and synergistic technology to help make sense of all of that, for one thing, but then to visualize it and to process it, and just to make sense of it mainly. But
and you talked about new mappers, like when you start to use it, it retrains the brain to think as nature does. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it does that?
Yeah, so like we've been used to this sort of separation thinking, separation paradigm, and that results in like silos, like databases that are separate to each other, websites that are separate to each other, applications that are separate to each other, and you don't get a real feel of how everything's connected when you're using a computer or the internet right now. And what I've been doing is redesigning the way the operating system works, and that can be applied to the web too, and there's others doing this, so that everything is much more interconnected. The information is all stored in one giant neural network, if you like, and the applications aren't separate to each other. They are more like interfaces or windows or ways of viewing or interacting with parts of that neural network. And then it becomes a bit more like a brain in a way. And so yeah, it's like a different way of dealing with information. I'm still exploring it for myself, but I do research and development, so that's my highest excitement, that's my passion, not to create finished products, but to explore new ideas. And I'm just prototyping something right now where like I'm taking all of my information and converting it into putting it into a neural network, and then creating little 3D interfaces that I can switch between, and eventually I'll replace all of the apps that I'm using with these interfaces. And then the advantage is whenever I'm looking at information that in what would have been an app, I can then look at what that information is connected to in a variety of different ways. And for me, this is busting many silos, and silo busting for me is a reflection of moving from separation thinking to synergistic thinking. So I guess perhaps it's linked to using more of the brain, instead of just the left brain, which is typically associated with separation and silos and this masculine way of thinking. And so yeah, it's like, for me, it's empowering to see how everything's connected to everything, and I want to use computers more in a flow state, that, you know, in it to be fun, and then to use different human-computer interfaces, so I'm not just using a keyboard and mouse, and to be able to program computers in a more fun way, in a more flowing way. Because I just realized, you know, I was coding and just watching myself, and I'm like, this is so linear. It's so linear, and it's like I'm in the 90s with the files and the folders, you know, and the desktop, and the, you know, I'm scrolling through files and folders with code, and the code is in code is in files, and then there's lines of code. It's so linear, and I've studied the brain, and I know it's neural networks and graphs, you know, and so why am I not coding in this graph realm? Why is it having to get converted into this linear thing, and why am I doing this on the keyboard? And so I'm sort of in the process of liberating myself from that, and what I also want to do is DJing, but then VJing, but with 3D interfaces showing information, and I can sort of automate the interfaces in time with the music, and that's something I want to be doing over the next couple of years. I was going to call it cyber jockeying, because it's jockeying the cybersphere rather than just the music, because it's like automation basically of the devices. But yeah, there's a whole new version of the web that I really feel wants to emerge. I feel like I have a couple pieces of that, and I've met others who I feel telepathically connected to. You know, there's massive levels of synchronicity, and the kind of experience that you can't explain just on a normal 3D level, and it feels like, you know, we're all part of a larger team. We've come here to bring this new version of the web to humanity, and it's our excitement, and it's going to be amazing and a massive upgrade, and I feel like it's an important part of the infrastructure for the new Earth, and I just feel like we're all a puzzle piece of that, and it's fractal. There are societal, well, in a body, you have organs, and, you know, organ systems and organs and tissues and cells, and you have a natural holarchy, and there's agency on multiple levels, and there's structure on multiple levels, and function on multiple levels, and I think just like this, the Earth is going to self-organize into a new dynamic structure that resembles a body, and this is where we'll have this concept of having a unique function in the whole, which is non-arbitrary. It will be based on our DNA, and there'll be this sort of awakening consciousness of planetary intelligence, which is transcending human intelligence, but including it, okay? That's a new concept for us. But it's something that we'll feel, right? It's not just going to be abstract. We'll feel it, we'll see it, because we're going to map everything, and we'll be guided with, you know, counselors who understand this kind of theory to, like, you know, what is it you need? What do you love doing? And we'll all gradually align ourselves with the function that feels right for us. And we'll start to see more and more of this synchronicity, more and more of this, like, you know, phenomena of synergy and novelty and amazing things emerging when we have these deeper levels of synergy, which are beyond collaboration. And that will naturally, there'll be a natural emergence of different sort of like societal sectors, but I think they're more like organismic function, right? But you know, it's not the planet is not a human body, right? So if it's a planetary organism, it's only analogous to a human body, right? It's a planet, so a planet has its own level in the universe. It has its own unique thing, just as a galaxy does. So, but I think it does have, to some extent, some agency, and it does have a self-expression, and I think it's part of a larger Holon, which is the solar system or the galaxy, and there is a community that we're a part of, whether we know it or not. And as soon as we become coherent as a planet, and not schizophrenic and insane, then we'll start to become more aware of the environment we're in, the cosmic environment.
Gaia will be ready to speak with other Gaias.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and it's already resonating on the sort of the next level. It's, there are more and more cells and multicellular humans who are aware of it, like that there's more, that we're being given support. And
could you mention a few maybe that you're familiar with and
learn from? I think two of the largest non-physical influences are, or perhaps well known, are Bashar and Abraham. Like for me, that I've experienced a sort of I've experienced that's been empowering. Like for me, that's been empowering. For other people who've used that knowledge, it's been empowering. And from the Pleiadians and the Arcturians, I feel connected to those two groups. And there's lots of groups who might call themselves Pleiadian or Arcturian, and like I don't really care about labels. And right now, it's like I get an intuitive sense for what's really going on and who's really out there. But I find right now there's so much to kind of heal and integrate. It's like the here and now is more important than like where is this information coming from. For me, is less important than the information and the effect it has on me, and how I can apply it in my life, and if it works for me, right?
Exactly, that's beautiful. Like, it doesn't matter if it is alien or wherever it's from. If it's empowering, it's doing a service.
Alien is alienation, and if there's no separation, it's all one, it's all us anyway, whether it's coming from the Pleiadians or the Arcturians. It's just different parts of myself, different parts of yourself, different parts of ourself. And I think ultimately it's about feeling it intuitively. Is this helping me? And I think feeling actually that's another part of the new paradigm for me, or calling it the new paradigm doesn't really make sense. I would call it the natural paradigm, the healthy paradigm, the heart paradigm. It's feelings are important. It's how we can discern feel our like alignment with source, with why we came here, with what we really want. It's like if we want to experience fulfillment, then our feelings are going to show us the way.
They're a guidance.
Yeah, and above and beyond any information that comes from anyone, I think that's actually the only thing we really need. And that's why I resonate with Bashar and Abraham, because basically they're just saying that. They're just saying, use your guidance system, use your feelings, use your emotions, trust yourself, follow your highest excitement, and use your feelings to modulate your thought processes so that you can follow your highest excitement even more. And I think it's those two things for me that are essential, is following your highest excitement, cultivating an active intention to do that, and self-regulating, which is when you're experiencing a painful feeling, which I call an emotion, like sadness, fear, anger, or hate, you use that as a self-regulation signal, an adaptation signal to modulate your mind, your thoughts, your mental body, change it, and then your feelings change. And that's your like biofeedback mechanism, and so it's like aligning with your passion, but using the guidance system, and you see the connection between those two things, that the guidance system is bringing you back to following your passion, and following your passion attracts to you what you actually need to follow your passion, and it's of value to the whole, right? And that is an assertion that I just made, and it requires, I think, more evidence to prove that, and I think we should find the evidence to prove that, because that is the unveiling of the planetary intelligence, right? It's that if I follow my passion and do what feels good to me, I then express something or do something that is non-arbitrary, right? It's non-arbitrary. What do my feelings actually mean? It's a biological signal. We barely understand our bodies, right? It's so complex. Like, it's like we're so used to being in these bodies, and we think we understand the world fairly well.
With 5 senses.
Yeah.
Millions of senses, I think.
But it's so far still beyond our comprehension, you know, just because we can break something down and study it in, you know, it's this reductionistic way of understanding things. Yeah, and then with the limited 5 senses, or 6 or whatever, we still don't really know, you know, what's going on. I think we're really seriously like enmeshed in a mystery on multiple levels, like not just on the biological level, on the existential level, on the cosmic level as well, but the feelings, yeah, it's still a mystery exactly how it's operating. At least to me it is, but I feel as though that's a key, is to understand that when we follow it, what we create is not arbitrary. It's like we become a puzzle piece, you know, that fits into other puzzle pieces. There's something going on there that is worthy of our attention.
Definitely, because that's what synchronicity is, right? When you're moving in a certain way and something comes to you that fits in that moment, it's like...
Yeah, well, the synchronicity is a sign that there's some other kind of organization that is not just this sort of physical Newtonian, you know, linear kind of organization. There's some other, like, way things are being organized intelligently, and you know, there's probably lots of ways to explain that, but there's something going on, you know, like. But yeah, I think the more we come into alignment with our creativity and our power and our joy, and you know, then we're contributing to the solution. You know, we're being a solution. We're bringing something in, and that's the new Earth. That is part of the new Earth. You're part of the new Earth when you're doing that, and you can't be complaining or fighting or abusing people if you're following your heart and doing what feels good. And I can see how people could misinterpret that. You know, doing what feels good, sometimes it seems that could be selfish, but we're not talking about like just doing what feels good on a sort of shallow level that is like an addiction.
Like instant gratification.
Yeah, it's more like what feels deeply fulfilling in your heart. And there's also this idea of chakras and, you know, the chakra system, and another perspective on it is that we're moving from the solar plexus chakra to the heart chakra. We're opening the planetary heart chakra, and that means everyone is opening their heart chakra, right? So it's like a hologram. Yeah, that's going to help us balance all these other levels and aspects of our being. You know, so our survival issues, our bodily issues, our power issues are all affected by, you know, the passion and the heart and, you know, that kind of oneness that we can feel. Everything's inverted, right? So there's that word educar, which to draw out, you know, instead of cramming in, drawing out, it's to bring people's natural genius out of them, to nourish children and give them variety to choose from, and, you know, support them in following their passion, and providing them with obviously a safe, comfortable, healthy environment, but emotional support, love. Love starts with that, really. But then a variety of things to play with and learn from. And I think that, you know, that would continuously be changing as they naturally mature their minds, and, you know, there's a natural growth and evolution. And of course, you know, if you've got a global map of the planetary infrastructure and everything is open source and transparent, you can actually learn from what is happening in real time directly. So, You don't need to watch the news. You don't need to read a book. You can just connect to the, sector of society that you're interested in, or the planetary function, and see who is actually involved in that right now, who's the experts in that field, and what's happening there right now, what resources are being used, what intentions do people have. Just being able to really, it's almost like the whole Earth's transparent, really, and you can already reach out to anything on the planet and learn from that or play with that. I think that's what it's going to be like. It's very connected. It's just about connecting in harmony and contributing something, instead of what we've got now, which is like a world away from that, isn't it? I see education happening in community groups. I don't think we're going to have schools, really. I guess there'll be sort of educational facilities, but they'll be more like communities. Education is really multidimensional, isn't it? There's emotional intelligence and conflict resolution and critical thinking. These are things that I think are quite foundational, that we weren't taught, really, at least not in schools. But yeah, there's probably going to be standard things that we would like to empower people with, empower children with, that are not just specific to their calling. Like we all got taught basic mathematics, but I don't think anything will be forced on children. And this system of schooling we have now is analogous to a prison, isn't it? It's very prison-like. So it's not going to be like that. What does nature mean to me? Nature is me, source. Nature is source, essence, nature, source, this, now. It's all the same thing. To me, they're all symbols. From my perspective, in the way I wire my brain up and the way I point symbols to other symbols, all these symbols have ended up pointing to each other and then to something transcendental that I can't really name with a well, I can point to it, but it's not a symbol, it's not a word, and it's a mystery. And I feel as though source, nature, consciousness, essence, it's all, describing the same thing, which is existence itself, that we are. And for me, it's made of information or time. Like, for me, each moment is like a snapshot or a part of creation of existence. And for me, what exists is time. So reality for me is what exists, and what exists is experience, and that for me is time. And so I think in time-space rather than now space and time. And I feel like source, nature, essence, whatever you call it, is like the set of all now moments, the set of all times, all consciousness. So I went through a shift from thinking as though the universe was made of matter, like different types of energy in space, and then I turned inside out, and now I feel as though the substance of existence is really non-physical experience, consciousness, and it exists within the space of the here and now, or the observer. Not that those two things are necessarily separate, but it's the only way I can get anywhere near to describing that, is to separate those two things and say, well, I have an experience and then I'm also observing it. And for me, that's nature. So I think that my perception of that tree is real, right? It's a real experience, but the tree is having its own experience, right? Well, I should say the universe is having an experience of being a tree. That's actually more accurate. And it's all happening right now, and that's nature. And it's a complete mystery, right? Like it's just mind-boggling. And the human mind kind of flips out a bit, you know, because it's not linear. That kind of thinking about time in that way is not linear. My whole lifetime has already happened. So that's real, it's a bit of a shift. But that's really where I'm at right now, and I can feel nature also to me on a more human level means balance, intelligence, harmony, divinity, sacredness, and I don't really feel that when I'm in a city. not so easily, but like when I'm in nature, as in like this is nature, and I can feel more peace and stillness, and there's this kind of like depth to it that is hard to describe. And yeah, I feel as though I'd like to be more like that, you know. I'm aspiring to be more like that. I think it sets a good example.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the way to do it is by just, you know,
Yeah.
over time spending more time
Yeah.
surrounded in it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Embracing it.
not cutting ourselves off from it so much. And we actually want to include ecosystems in our essential system, you know, in the Infinite World game. Yeah, well, I think the best thing for me to talk about with the Infinite World game is the systems level and the technology layer. So Devor is specializing more in the essentials system, and I'm looking at the systems level and the technology layer. So the way I've been describing it is a gamified whole systems platform for a new lifestyle. The lifestyle is synergistic co-creation, and the infrastructure, the platform is like multiple layers, and it's going to include a physical layer of physical places where we can live and co-create. The sort of people layer is actually us. We are part of the system. We're not separate from it. We're part of the system. We're a layer in the system. Then we've got technology, like resources. Then we've got the mental layer, which is actually like the noospheric layer, and it seems important to have that on its own layer because we realize how much effect our thoughts actually have on everything. So to make that explicit means that we end up then mapping our own thoughts and beliefs, which creates a sort of a meta-programming feedback loop, which means that we're on a slightly different mental plane because we're then abstracting our abstractions and talking about talking and thinking about thinking, which is what I'm doing right now as I'm speaking about speaking. I love that. It's like, you know, it's sort of like evidencing it, you know, and embodying it. And then there's like the economic layer would be kind of its own layer, but it's also kind of spanning multiple layers because it involves technology, and within each layer there are also multiple layers, especially the technology layer. There's a stack of technologies, and then on top of that we're building economic systems. One of the things I've been thinking about recently and getting excited about is the economic aspect of this, and that is exciting to me because it relates to the scalability of it and the investability of it, and that's really important. So we are already living in a new way. We're living in a community. There's 10 of us. We're sharing things, we're following our passion, we're synergizing, we have a mother fund, and that's a pot of money that is distributed through the essentials process, which means that we get what we need, not necessarily what we want, but what we need. But that is what we want because we've agreed to be a co-creator and acknowledge that we have a unique function. Therefore, we have a unique set of needs. So what we attract to us in terms of money and resources is what we need, right? Which makes the entire thing more efficient. Because we're all following our passion and getting what we need and sharing, it will ultimately result in a greater amount of value being created than would have been created if we all acted independently. Now that is the key, and that's what makes it scalable, because if you do that in a large field, what you're talking about is a huge amount of value being generated. So imagine you've got a community and a membrane that defines that community. Inside that membrane, in that community, there's three things: heart-centered consciousness, which means following your passion and self-regulating, doing emotional alchemy work, right? Sharing, synergizing. So those are three main things in the abstract that would be happening. From my perspective, what that does is it creates a huge amount of value, right? So inside, everyone's sharing everything, everyone's following their passion, everyone's synergizing. Synergizing is they're coming together to create new stuff based on the inner motivation following their passion. So you've got that going on in a membrane. That's a new lifestyle, right? Following your passion, sharing, synergizing, those three things. That creates a huge amount of value. And to understand why that happens, you have to learn a few things, and just experiencing it also helps, right? But just assume that's true, right? Then you can synergize or collaborate with the rest of society. So you've got a huge amount of value being generated that can be provided as products and services out here in the world, right? And then money comes back in and is distributed through the essentials process, which is very efficient, right? It's not a market economy, right? We're not buying things in here, right? It's an essential system. We're creators. We're getting what we need to create what we want, right? And there's also the project level, which is the next level in the holarchy, where we have these things called holoships. And holoships would also have their own kind of essentials process and have their own needs and attract resources. But just to keep it like simple, what I was going to describe was this kind of scalable dynamic, because for me that's really exciting. So like you've got money coming in, value creation, value going out, money coming in, value creation, and it's like this expanding kind of torus, goes like this. And if you just took any group of people with an income, you'd get like a normal distribution. You get people who earn less and earn more. And if you just got everyone to share everything, there'd be a line in the middle. The graph would look like that, yeah, and it'd be up here. And half the people would get less and half the people would get more. But the good thing is, if they all shared their income, they wouldn't need to earn a living anymore, because they would just be earning money every time anyone sold anything, right? So the advantage of that would be we wouldn't have to like be in survival mode earning a living. We'd get rid of the stress, right? And
free up a lot of time.
Yeah, and but like it would still require people selling things and transacting. But imagine that the thing that you're selling is actually something that anyone is monetizing or commercializing, and it's come from people following their passion. Everyone's following their passion. Every function that is required is there, and things get done, right? So there are products of value, but then the money doesn't come back in necessarily to you. It comes back into the whole, and it gets distributed, so it pays for the new lifestyle, right? But then imagine, instead of everyone just getting paid the same, you have a more intelligent way of allocating and distributing resources, which is the essential system. So it's even more, it's even, you know, it's like, it's just such a different paradigm. And I think this is why it's like, we're already doing it. We're going to do it on a larger and larger level and map everything and make it visible and show people. And it's going to be a very attractive lifestyle. And we're going to have a onboarding process, and there's going to be a kind of migration from the current lifestyle to the new lifestyle. And it's going to go exponential because of synergy, okay? Because the whole is more than the sum of its parts, and this community is going to generate a huge amount of value. So that's what's going to enable it to grow in a financial, economic, physical sense, because it's you know, we want to share everything. We don't want to use money. We want to use the essential system and give people what they really need. And but how are we going to pay bills and rent when? How are we going to create a global network of hubs off the grid with solar power or 0-point technology, whatever, with, you know, and electrogravitic travel between, or teleportation, or whatever? How are we going to build all of these hubs and, you know, give everyone a house or space in a thing, or both, or, you know, thinking like on an abundant level? How can we create an abundant, a physical ecosystem of places all around the Earth when right now all of those resources are to some extent monopolized by people who demand a specific currency in exchange for access to those resources? We're going to need to interface with that system, right? One way or another. Living in the gift economy in the membrane is great, but we need a way of interfacing with the wider field. So what that looks like, I think, is collaboration and transacting still, but in a different way, where the whole community acts as a unified whole, like an organism, or it's like a company, but more like a decentralized company. And then inside, instead of being employed, you're onboarded into this massive network, which is the new Earth, the new humanity, UFO, right? And yeah, you can essentially just follow your passion, and you're contributing enough value to the whole by doing so for it to sustain itself and grow. And we'll just, you know, let's just do it and see what happens, right? Like, we're already doing it. We're just scaling it up. Yeah, we're just going to scale that up now and make it more efficient. And I just think there's going to be a supernova of creativity. There's going to be an explosion of creativity, and it's going to be massive.
So
we can't predict what's going to happen.
Can't predict anything, no.
No, the nature of synergy is also unpredictable. A synergy is also partially defined as something that is unpredictable based on the sum of its parts too. That's often included in its definition. And well, yeah, you bring a bunch of geniuses together, you don't know what's going to happen, do you? Like, but it's going to be interesting. Yeah, so animals, again, it's like, you know, we're in these human bodies, but we are the animals as well, and it's, you know, it's a mirror of how we're treating ourselves and cutting ourselves off from each other, from nature, from our feelings. Our health is influenced by the way we treat ecosystems and nature. We don't seem to acknowledge that we're in an interconnected whole, that everything is affecting everything, and there is a feedback loop, and we do suffer when we poison an ocean. We are suffering as a result of that. So when we start to understand how everything's connected to everything, that is going to become apparent. But yeah, we're going to relate to nature in a new way, and look after the biosphere. It's also about survival, but it's much more than that. It's not just about not killing the ecosystems to survive. It's about thriving, right? So we want the ecosystems to be in a healthy state, and that's, you know, it's also about maximizing wealth. It's, you know, it's having a higher concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere is probably going to benefit our minds. You know, we're probably going to think more clearly if there's more oxygen in the air. So if we've cut down the Earth's, you know, we've destroyed the lungs, you know, then we're going to have less oxygen, and we're not going to have as much energy to think clearly. so yeah, just it's going to benefit us to help nature to stop disrupting the natural harmony of nature, and if we can help it come back to its natural harmonic state, yeah, like clean up the oceans and the air, and stop using all these harmful technologies. There's a lot to do. We're going to have to map it all out and systematically address everything. There's probably going to be help given to us if we're open to that, from off planet. And yeah, it all links back to the way we think again, back to the way we see ourselves. Do we see ourselves as separate to nature, or do we see it as part of us? And are we just, we're harming ourselves by harming nature. So I think it's healing to be around animals. I think they're connected to source naturally. They're very in the now. They're very present, and I think just meditating and watching animals is healing. And if you're opening your heart up and you're not distracting yourself with endless entertainment, you're not poisoning yourself with drugs that reduce your state of awareness and consciousness. If you're not doing the things that that lead you to be controlled and used by whatever energies, or if you're, because I don't think we necessarily need to do anything to expand our consciousness. It's more like stop doing the things that contract it. If we remove all of these things, we naturally open our hearts, and we naturally connect to life in a different way. It's just, we are nature, we are cells, we're not just people, we're biological cells of the earth, and we're going to relate to all of it in a different way. It's going to feel different when we stop doing all these other things like watching TV and drinking alcohol and whatever it is. Yeah, it's it's to do with the mind, the big one. It's not even the effect physical thing has on you is not just determined by that thing, but your mindset. So it's going to come back to that always, isn't it?
Okay.
But I think animals have a lot to teach us, and they're already in harmony with the earth. So yeah.
I often say it's about becoming the stewards of nature that we were born to be, because we are nature. So why would you want to damage anything that's a cell of the collective organism?
Yeah.
Because it's damaging yourself. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. I think we're just naturally going to relate to everything in that way as soon as we just change our habits. And it's a bit like escape velocity, I feel. There's this kind of group of humans on the earth who are doing these things, who are opening up to a more spiritual consciousness, changing their habits, eating differently, thinking differently. And after a while, each individual reaches a certain level, which is like escape velocity, and then you're in a new world, and you're not there on your own, you're there with a whole global field of humans. And I think that it's only a matter of time before that field of consciousness of awakened humans get organized enough to create a new global infrastructure, and then something that other people can onboard into. And I think that's what's happening. That's what I see happening. Like the most mysterious, transcendental thing that seems to exist in this experience. It seems to be like everything, or the connectivity of everything to everything else. I don't know what love is. I honestly don't know. I know how it feels. It feels nice. It feels like connectivity, union. But what is it? What is love? I don't know. I guess one perspective is it is everything, in its source, but then you could also look at love as a frequency. It's something that exists in creation. It's like a feeling. Yeah, so what is love? What is anything? The thing is with the what is questions is I feel as though it kind of comes from sometimes a place of that there is one meaning, that there is an answer to that. But because words don't contain meaning, they have no intrinsic meaning, you can't answer those questions. So, like, it really is, what does that mean to you? What does love mean to you? What does that word mean to you? What does it mean to who? so, so I can't answer any what is question absolutely. I can just say what the word means to me. And love, what it means to me is multiple things. It's the connectivity of everything with everything else. It's also a feeling I have, of union and connectivity, and it's linked to compassion, it's linked to trust and joy. It's especially compassion. And yeah, I think that I feel it here in my heart, and it feels like, affection, kindness. But yeah, what is that? it's still, when you go into like the analytical side of it, then it gets very mysterious. Love is very, very. I really think love is extremely transcendental. It's extremely like, when you really put your mind into it, what is it really? What is love? It's something that affects our lives in such an intricate way that links to like creativity, links to the life force in a very specific way, and I think it's this very like kind of high dimensional parameter. It's very sort of abstract in a way, but yeah, I don't think I really can understand what it is. Like, I just feel it and I like it. I don't know what it is.
There's like, I mean, yeah, I mean, there needs to be probably more words for it, and you're doing a good job of describing that. Like kindness, compassion, these things that to give you a feeling that is like, you can use a word to describe what that is.
But then, if I answer a what is question, I'm going to use words, and then you could ask what is that, what is that, what is that for each word I use, and I'm going to use more and more words, and eventually all the words are going to point to other words that I've defined, right? So then none of the words have any apparent meaning because they're all pointing to each other, yeah? And that's called the symbol grounding problem. And so, yeah, it's like going to come from our embodiment, which is beyond language. So, yeah, it's a vibration, right? It's a feeling. Yeah, wow, yeah. It's, yeah, it's patterns, geometries, expressed in sound, which is a form of vibration that you can feel on an emotional and physical level. Music, yeah, what is music? Same thing. I mean, like, I could just say it's all geometry, it's all patterns, but that isn't music. Clearly, it's clearly more than that. So and music to me is an essential part of my existence. I think life would be boring for me without music. I think it reminds me that like life is supposed to be fun, and I like the way music can influence my perception and my mood, and inspire me. And I like how music is like Alan Watts was saying, life is not about getting to the destination, it's about the journey itself. And music is also is also about that. It's about listening to it. It's not about getting to the end of the song, and I like that. And it's like it's a synergy of patterns and sounds that somehow connects to us on an emotional level, isn't it? Like, yeah.
And like, you know, in all in all manner of ways now, this conscious music is coming back into play. You know, like singing bowls and harmonic resonance. And, the natural frequencies that we
well then it connects to us not just in an emotional way but in a spiritual way, and we can experience almost like a meditative state whilst listening to music, and you know, an expansion of our awareness and something that's meaningful on a deep level. And I like that too. There's some music I listen to that is also almost like a spiritual experience when you're listening to it, and helps me integrate what's going on, you know, shifting my belief system into the next level. I found music helping me to do that as well, like lyrics and songs, and it's really inspiring, and it would be nice to, you know, be able to like navigate all of that and access that in a new way as well. That'd be nice, you know, rather than, you know, again we're limited by the current internet with, like, you know, Spotify and SoundCloud, and I love Spotify and SoundCloud, but it's still, you know, commercial, semi-commercial or commercial, and it's still the current version of the web, you know, and wow, when we, you know, we're going to experience such a renaissance in our creativity, and it's worth hanging around for, I think, you know, like it's the universe speaking is another way of thinking about music. You know, it's literally, you know, the universe is vibrating itself, it's communicating. It's interesting because the om, that sound, whenever I hear that, I often think it's almost as though the universe is speaking its own name, and at the same time saying, like, I am vibration, I am one, right? I am all. And it's like, that's your name, right? That's our name, it's Om. I think that beyond any particular person, like a guru or a spiritual, you know, guy or woman, or, you know, beyond anything external, anything, I would say use your emotional guidance system, right? Like, don't use it because I just said that. Use it because you have one, right? Don't use it because someone else is telling you to. It's just realizing how important the feelings are, what they are, the true nature of our feelings. That's really the biggest inspiration that anyone can have. I think it's like the heart it's best if the heart is the authority, if what you want is to be fulfilled and happy, right? Let's just say that. Like, let's drop the morality around it and say, if you want to be happy and fulfilled, and you like love and trust and joy and compassion and these energies, then trust your emotions and trust yourself, right? And you don't need a guru, you don't need anyone to tell you what to do, there's no authority outside of yourself. That's it, right? And, like, don't take my word for it, right? Just, like, it's everyone knows on some level already. So who I would recommend, who I find inspiring, is like Abraham and Bashar. And the reason I would recommend them is because basically they are just helping you get back to that realization and awareness where you're more connected to yourself and you know what to do, right? So it doesn't matter what circumstances you're in. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter who you know. nothing outside of you matters, because it's all fluid, it all changes, and it will change. Once you change your mind and your state of consciousness through the guidance of your feelings, all of that's going to change, and it's always going to change forever. And so yeah, I recommend Abraham and Bashar, and I found Matt Kahn really inspiring. I resonate with the frequency, the vibration, the energy of unconditional love, which is also called Christ consciousness sometimes, and I really feel that Matt Kahn has found a way to embody that very consistently, and I found his guidance extremely synchronistic and helpful during my journey. So I really recommend Matt Kahn, and I feel he's very heart-centered. And yeah, Abraham and Bashar, Cry On, I found interesting. Like I went through a phase of just reading everything, and then after a while I was basically just reading channeled books and listening to channeled stuff, and now I don't really read anything. You know, I'm too involved in the here and now, and I feel like I'm just learning from the relationships I have in the universe, and I'm connected enough now to myself to sort of feel like there's enough already there. But I still every now and then like to listen to Bashar and Abraham and Matt Kahn, because those are the sort of three sources I still feel inspired by and connected to, but not so much from a place of needing the guidance, more just like it's a bit of additional inspiration, I suppose.
It's funny, when you were speaking then, I just kept hearing Star Wars in my head. You
Yeah.
know, search your feelings, Luke.
Return of the Jedi. Yeah, well, when that's what's going to happen next, basically. You know, it's teleportation, phasing in and out of the third dimension. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if that starts happening in you know, the next 10 years or so.
And as an analogy to what's really happening in this
telekinesis,
reality,
telepathy.
What is, you know, like the meaning of the Force, like as a.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot to do with non-locality and the connectivity between everything, and the power of the mind. I believe computers are actually a kind of bridge between mind and machine, like mechanism, right? So what is the gap between mind and mechanism? A computer, right? Basically. And well, at least that was maybe my way of bridging those two, and I just feel increasingly that the universe is more mind-like than machine-like. And if that's the case, then, well, the laws of physics really are more like an experience based on habitual ways of thinking, right? So, and I think there's, you know, it's not so easy to just reprogram your subconscious mind in its entirety, and also there's probably a collective effect too. So this consensus reality, you know, it's a consensus reality. It's a co-creative experience. We're not just in a void, in a vacuum, creating our reality with our beliefs on our own. We're participating in a group experience, and that probably has, to some extent, fixed parameters or agreements which maybe are encoded in us in some way. And let's just say that that's fixed, then that means that there are some things that we're not going to be able to just change with our belief systems. But I would say, like, it's actually a lot more malleable than we think it is. And ultimately, I don't know if anything is fixed. You know, is the DNA fixed? Obviously not, right? I don't know. You know, in films like Spider-Man, you have all of the DNA, you know, changing all at once in quite a radical way, and then all the cells start functioning differently. And, you know, at some point, maybe that will create a feedback loop of consciousness between our neurology and our DNA, right? And we'll be able to morph our biology. So, you know, and we're talking about electrogravitic technology now, that's been suppressed for about a century. And when we see that stuff, we'll realize that gravitational fields can be affected on a local level, right? That you can create local gravitational wells, and it's not just about having huge amounts of matter. And then, perhaps there's a way that the biology can start to interact with the gravitational fields, right? And there's the third eye, there's the whole DMT realm that is ridiculous. Like, obviously we don't have a clue what's going on, and who knows, maybe the third eye is like a super advanced augmented reality technology and a telepathic internet all in one, and that, we're not going to need augmented reality glasses in the internet because it's already there if we just, reconnect it. And there's this whole thing about 12-stranded DNA and, these other chakra systems and all that stuff is, it's all going to come out eventually, isn't it? But step by step, I guess. Dreams, yeah. Dreams, one of my favourite topics, one of my passions. I've always been fascinated by dreams, and probably since I've always, as long as I can remember actually, I've had quite fantastical dreams. That's the word I would use, like seeing other worlds, creatures, and all sorts of otherworldly fantastical things. And my dreams are very seldom mundane. They haven't really ever been about things happening in my life with people I know. Like, barely ever do I dream about that, and I've always found that interesting, and I do think I know why that is now. I don't know if I should say. This is kind of opening up a bit of a wormhole, but I've also experimented a lot with lucid dreaming and astral projection, and I feel like those are two very different things to me, and like I can experience quite a difference between dreaming, lucid dreaming, and astral projection. And I haven't ever really experienced remote viewing the physical world. It always kind of looks a bit different for me, and then I tend to just sort of drift off into the astral planes, and then I'm like, goodbye. But I don't know. I've had a lot of really interesting experiences in the astral, and it's quite like having psychedelic experiences, really. It's just natural, and everyone, I think, has an interesting dream life, but we often don't really remember it so well. And I think that dreams for me are a way of seeing my own psyche, like a mirror. Dreams for me are like a way of learning about what's going on in my own subconscious mind, as in me on a personality level, but also me on a collective level, because I'm on an individual level a reflection of what's around me, right? And it's really interesting that there do seem to be certain archetypes that actually, like symbols in dreams that have a meaning beyond your given interpretation of the symbol, which is really interesting, right? And that's what Carl Jung found out about, and Tan is very passionate about Carl Jung, and we've had many amazing conversations on this. But then lucid dreaming, I feel, is like, then you can start to play with your own subconscious in a more interesting way, and you can relate to it, and it's like the conscious mind and the subconscious mind connecting more. But then astral projection for me is like, it's like, it feels as though I'm no longer playing in the realm of my own psyche, right? My own subconscious. It feels like I'm traveling. I'm going somewhere, and I'm just as conscious as I am now, and I'm in an environment, and I feel like often I've been taken to somewhere or shown something by some part of myself. I guess I would just say my higher self. And the main difference I notice is that in a dream and in a lucid dream as well, the manifestations are pretty fluid. So, you know, you look away and you look back and it's changed, right? And it's sort of moving around a bit maybe, and it's, you know, it's all a bit like sort of random. It's not random, of course, but it's very like sort of fickle and fluid, and, you know, it doesn't stay there. And it's easy to like morph things and change things and manifest things. But within the astral planes, you know, when you're somewhere else, it really, you know, everything is very, very, very vivid. It doesn't change. You look away and you look back, it's still there. And it's so intricately organized that the experience you have is as though you're looking at a piece of art, right? It's already there. It hasn't, you know, someone's created it and they're showing it to you. And it's like suddenly you're in a whole city or a whole world. And it's like that, you know, and there are people there. And I'm just talking to them. And like, yeah, how are you doing? Like, and it's, yeah, I just feel as though, you know, I'm connecting to other people, you know, and I think that there are these astral planes, and I think it makes sense if your ontology is not physical matter. You know, if you understand that reality and the existence isn't built out of physical matter, it's built out of consciousness or energy, then of course, you know, there's going to be other consensus realities. And how do you travel between those? Well, you change your frequency, change your channel. You're like, oh, now I'm on this channel, now I'm on this channel. So I've experienced that through astral projection, but it's been mostly occurring spontaneously for me. And I do feel as though this is a sort of virtual reality already. And, you know, we've all incarnated, we've all come here to experience it. So we're not necessarily going to be, you know, all over the astral planes when we're here to have this experience and to have an experience of forgetting that we're non-physical, so we can really have an experience of being physical, you know, because we believe we're physical beings so much that we're just totally focused and immersed in that. And I think, but astral projection for me has shown me that that's actually a story, and it's not, you know, it's not true, but it's funny because I actually think we've come here to have that experience and then awaken out of it and go home, which is source. So that's what I'm experiencing, and I'm enjoying that right now, and I'm glad I'm accessing that, and it feels more like home to me in a way. You know, there's this sort of subtle feeling of like home some of the times when I'm like in certain places, but it's absolutely fascinating, and I just, you know, can't get enough of it. But it doesn't happen very often to me right now, but I'm so doing so much like else right now in this reality. I feel okay with being mainly in this reality, but it's exciting to see there's so much else going on, you know, out there, which is here. Yeah.